Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to landscape drawing class. This is the first unit. I'm going to talk about today basically what landscape drawing is and some tools of the trade at the beginning of the first unit, inshallah. So landscape drawing is basically a drawing of nature and the environment. And like this beautiful painting that you see here, of course we'll be using black and white pencils as an introduction to this great art. So landscape drawing is drawing of nature with a focus on nature, the beauty of nature, the awe of nature, the space and the depth and the grandeur of nature. So this is a great example of a landscape painting. Now, in landscape art, landscape drawing, the focus is nature. The focus is not people or man-made objects. However, like in this painting over here, you see some little deers, whatever, and that's part of nature, and it gives a sense of size and depth to the bigger picture that you see over here. So in landscape art, the focus is not man-made objects. However, like over here in this painting that you see, if there are people or homes or etc., they do give a sense of size, perspective, and they make in my mind at least, if you have a little house in the painting, it's more welcoming. The landscape is not as threatening or as otherwise, and it's more inviting in a way. To me at least, for example, if you take this drawing, it looks like, do I belong here? Or over here, it looks like it's too big for me to be here, so to speak. But on the other hand, if you see something like this, it's more welcoming. You say, hey, it looks like they're having a good time, so to speak. Or if there's a home in the painting, it looks like, hey, it's more inviting in a sense. So it does serve a purpose in that way in the bigger picture. But the focus of landscape drawing, of course, is nature. Now, it's not that home or etc. can't be the focus of landscape drawing. For example, in this home, the focal point of this painting is, of course, this house, and as you can see, this human activity going on over here, which overall together is nevertheless a very beautiful painting. So today we're going to talk about some of the tools, basic drawing tools. That's the topic of today's. So basic drawing tools. So in here are some basic drawing tools. Okay, of course you have the pencils and there are different types of pencils which we're going to talk about. They're over here. There are two types of erasers over here, pencil sharpener, and these are tertullians and instruments to smudge, as we will discover. So these are the basic tools of drawing. So we shall talk about these individually. First is, of course, pencils. Now, pencils have names, and they go from the H and B's. Now, this is not a complete list, and this keeps going this way to 4H, for example, and then there will be 6H, and then there will be 8H, etc. So H is hard pencils, okay, and these are soft pencils, okay. Now, hardness and softness of pencils refers to the lead that's inside the pencil, okay, and hard pencils or hard lead, they tend to be light. They are light, and soft pencils are dark. Now, how dark the pencil is going to be in the paper depends on how much it bleeds, so to speak. In other words, how much lead it leaves on the paper. The less lead it leaves on the paper, the lighter the pencil is going to be. the more lead it leaves in the paper, the darker the pencil is going to be. So soft pencils, they leave behind more lead, and therefore they're darker. Hard pencils, they don't leave behind as much lead, so they are lighter. Okay, so the hardness and the softness determines whether or not a pencil is going to be dark or light. Now, in the middle of the road is HB. So this is like the neutral pencil, and then the 2B is like the number 2 pencil that's used for tests. Okay. All right. So it's very important to understand this concept. Okay. Now, so this is these are just the soft pencils that are illustrated over here. HB, 2B, 3B, 4B. My art teacher used to forbid us from using any of these pencils because we would ruin the drawing. So you really don't need much more than 4B for most drawing purposes. Okay, so you hardly ever need. But you can see just by looking at the pencil that these are softer pencils. They're almost like charcoal, and they come out very quickly. So these are very soft. Now, going from the lightest pencil to darkest over here. Okay. Now, what's going on over here is this. Okay. When you use a pencil, you apply gentle pressure like this. Okay. You don't dig the pencil into the paper, because that ruins the paper for one thing. So the way you generate these shades is by applying same amount of pressure. Okay, so if you take a 9B pencil and apply gentle pressure, this is what you get. And if you take a 9H pencil and apply gentle pressure, the same amount of pressure, you get this. So what you see here is that the same amount of pressure generates very dark colors and very light colors from different pencils. Okay, so when you draw, if you want to make darker shades, okay, okay, you can do one of two things. Okay, you pick a pencil that's darker. Let's say if you want drawing and you're drawing to 3H and say, I want something darker. Okay, either you go to a softer pencil. Okay, either you go from here and just pick this pencil, and you can clearly see with the same amount of pressure, you can generate darker shades. Now, this is a very important concept to understand. Okay, so I'm going to try to illustrate this to you. So, for example, you're drawing, okay, and then let's say this is your drawing, and then and this is the shade you're getting by applying gentle pressure. Again, you don't have to dig the pencil into the paper. That's not how you draw. So let's say if you want a darker shade, okay. If you wanted a darker shade, you can get it one of two ways. So I'm just going to draw another right here. So this is a pencil I'm using, and I want a darker shade. So there are two ways to get it. One is I can just apply more pressure. Okay, so I'm applying more pressure. But then I'm still not happy. Then I apply more pressure. What happens is then I rip the paper off, or I cause indentations in the paper. I mark the paper, and those are lines that destroy the paintings. Okay, so you can't dig the pencil in the paper. So let's say I try this and I get this. I'm still not happy with this shade of darkness. So what I can do is, so I can do this, and then I want to make this area darker. So I apply a second coat with the same gentle pressure. And if I want it more dark, I apply a third coat. See, a third coat. So I'm making this darker. All right. Now you see, well, that's dark, but I still want darker. Okay, that's the time to switch to a softer pencil. Okay, so that's the time you pick a pencil that is softer. Okay, and then you get a softer pencil. Now you can see with the same gentle pressure, you can get a much darker shade. So how do you know when to switch a pencil? The time to switch a pencil is when you're putting the paper in danger of ripping or digging holes in the paper. So that's when you change the pencil, when you cannot get the desired shade without being aggressive, so to speak. That's when you switch suits the pencil. So you cannot take, for example, okay, you can't take a 2-edge pencil and try to get a shade that looks like this. It's just not going to happen. So you can get a shade that's like this, which is similar to this. So this shade you can get with both of these pencils, right? So, but you can't make this one do this one. And try not to, you can't take a 7B pencil and try to get a 9-inch out of it. It's just not going to happen. So you have to understand these. So the harder the pencil is, that's H, okay? Okay, the lighter the color is. And the softer the pencil, those are B's, okay? The darker the pencil is, okay? And the range is from 9 to, so most kids don't have the most darkest, so most kids will have from 6B on to maybe like 6H on, if you, right, like that. All right. So now this is the same concept illustrated differently. See, with the 4H pencil, 4H light pencil, you can get all of these types of shades, okay? But you can't use a 4H pencil to get this shade. Okay, this is a I think this is a misprint. This is a 2B here. I think that's what they meant to write over there. So 2B, you can't get a 4H to do the shade. Now look at this. The 2H pencil is able to generate all the shades of the 4H plus a little extra. And an HB pencil is able to generate all of these shades plus a little extra. Now don't ask this pencil to generate this shade, and don't ask this pencil to generate this. It's hard without ruining the paper, okay? So now if you wanted to make this shade, okay, you can use any of these pencils, right? You can use any of these pencils, but it's going to be easier probably with this one and this one, right? So that's how you use the pencils. And if you want darker shades, you might want to choose a different pencil. So that's how the pencils work, okay? So this is called a value scale, like this, okay? So this is the range of, these are the best ranges for an 8B pencil, and these are the best ranges for a 6H pencil. So now if you compare these two pencils, they're very similar. They're very similar. These two pencils, they're very similar. These two pencils very similar, but if you compare these two pencils, they become different, right? So you have to understand how, which pencils to pick up for which purposes. Okay, that's about pencils. We're talking about the tools of drawing today. So the next thing is that erasers. Now erasers are, you'll see shortly, very, very useful. First, because they can erase your mistakes, but in fact they are drawing tools. You can use them to draw. What do you mean by that? You'll see in a second. So these are there are 5 basic types of erasers. These are 4, and the 5th one I put over here is a pencil. There's an eraser pencil, okay? So the pink eraser, which you're very familiar with, you use it when you geometry and algebra, okay? You don't typically use this in drawing. These are gum erasers. You don't typically use this in drawing with pencils. Now these are the 2 very useful erasers, the vinyl eraser and the kneaded eraser, K-N-E-A-D-E-D, the kneaded eraser. This is very, very, very useful. I use this all the time when I used to draw. So the kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser is called kneaded because it's just like dough, when you're making a roti or something like that, you can knead it. It looks like Play-Doh, basically, and it's an eraser, and it works wonders. And vinyl eraser erases without causing too much shear or damage, and without smearing the pencil very much. So they don't cause as much smear, vinyl erasers, so they're very useful. And this one I put here precisely because of this eraser pencil. This is not a color. This is like rubber inside there, and that's an eraser pencil. Now, how to use these erasers? So this is a kneaded eraser. See, it's like Play-Doh. So what they have done is they have shaded this, and with this eraser you can change it into different shapes, and they drew these lines over here. They erased out those lines, and they're very useful. Now in this drawing of apple, for example, they shaded all the apple, okay, and they took the kneaded eraser right there, it's like a big blob, and they just put the kneaded eraser right there to make that area lighter, okay? So see, they made this area lighter by just damping the eraser on the apple, and that just makes that. And they can use the apple the same way. They made this area lighter by just touching the paper with the eraser, and you can see there's area over here. Perhaps they used the eraser to make it lighter. So it's much easier, see, to go like this with the pencil and shade this apple, and then just get rid of this after you have shaded it. And look at this area they have used to make that area lighter. So if you want to make certain areas lighter than the other areas, and you will need to do that in art all the time, you can do it by just simply dabbing the eraser on that area and making that area lighter in that way. So it's very, very useful. So for example, here they made this area lighter, they made this area lighter, and that's primarily, they can make this area lighter, etc. Okay, so this is a reflection of the light. The light's coming this way, the light hitting this, and light is going over there. There's usually a little light reflection in an object like that. So here's examples. This is called a kneaded eraser, so it means you can change it into beautiful shapes like this. You can make a very, very sharp, pointy edge like that if you wanted to. And they're using here, for example, to get certain texture too. I think they're drawing hair or something like that over here. See? You can erase that in that way. And look at this picture here. See what they did over here. They made big blotches of darkness here, and then they took out these areas with the eraser. That's what they did, and they made that area. Yeah, you see this? See how they did that? So these are the uses of the eraser. Okay. Let's see some more. Now look at this gentleman. He's dabbing it over here. See, they're dabbing. This is how you dab that apple, for example, to make certain areas lighter. And there are other ways you can do the same thing. You look at how beautiful this person is making hair look like hair, but they just put the pencil marks, and they're using a brush to kind of like smear the pencil marks and to make it look like a flock of hair. Now you wonder how they did that. And here they're trying to get some light shades in hair over here at the very pointy end of the kneaded eraser. Here's some more uses. See, they did the sky, and they took the eraser to kind of like erase the moon out of there, and to make it look like the moon. So that's how this was done. See, okay, and over here, see, they used the pencil, this eraser pencil, to get rid of this part of the eye, and like over here, they made it lighter like that. Okay, so erasers are so useful. Sometimes you think you can draw, just do the whole painting with just erasers. So here, look at this. They made this lighter over here with an eraser. So you can see there are many uses for erasers if you know how to use them. And look at this. They used the kneaded eraser over here to smear these lines. These are lines created by the eraser like that. Okay, you follow? Same over here. They made these lines using kneaded eraser, going like this. Okay, it's quite amazing. Okay, now another use of eraser is like the misty feeling. See, they dab all of this area was dabbed. That's how I understand it anyways. They dabbed this area with the eraser to make it look like misty sensation. And same thing over here. You can do that over here. See, misty. The sense of mist is very easy to create with the use of the kneaded eraser. Okay, like that. So you draw it, and then you blotch it over here with the kneaded eraser, and it gives you a sense of mist. Okay, the next tool that's available is the blending stump. This is a blending stump. It's very useful. Blending stump is very, very useful, and this is called a tortillon. And these are very similar tools. This is usually what I prefer anyways. So this is used for smearing. Smearing is very important and very useful. And for example, if you make lines like that, it looks, you can kind of see the lines, right? But if you want it to be more homogeneous color, if you want to get rid of those lines, one shade of color, you use this blending step to kind of gently. You're not ripping the paper off or anything. In fact, you can't apply hard pressure there. That's going to ruin the paper. And what it does is actually embeds the lines into the paper. You kind of like cementing the lines if you use too much pressure and digging them into the paper, and you can't. The lines become permanent, if anything. So you use gentle pressure to blend over here. You can use also paper towel, right? Gentle paper towel, and you can use a Q-tip for similar purposes, and very helpful. So you can. This is an example how it's blended. See, blended. Okay, and so you can use blending. For example, you have something like this, and just with blending, this goes from here to here. Okay, they just use the use the blending stump to make it one homogeneous color. And look at how the clouds blended in over here. Look how different it looks after it's blended, and it looks a more real appearance, right? So they are very useful tools, the blending stump. Now here's they're blending the apples. See, you see this? This part is blended. This part is not yet blended. So it makes it look nearer. The other thing you can sometimes do is actually just use it as a paintbrush. So you can take, like, you can bleed some lead into the paper, and you kind of go in there with the stump and borrow some of the lead and just use this as a paintbrush, so to speak, on paper, paintbrush of lead, as they're doing over here. So here's more examples of blending. Okay, so this is unblended over here. Okay, after blending, it looks like this. Okay, it looks like this. So the blending. Now, the same has occurred over here, blending. So look how beautiful that looks over here. And over here, they have erased some out. See, they have erased it. It's hard to use pencil to shade everything but that. See, it's easier to shade it and try to not to shade over here, and then erase this part out. It's much easier to do that. And look, they have erased this part out as well, right? So this is how you use erasers in drawing. They're very, very useful in that way. Some more examples of blending. Okay, more examples of blending. And here's example. Okay, I guess this is some hair, lock of hair. So this is a pencil mark. And here they have used the blending stump to create this fuzzy feeling of hair that you get, and that's how that works. Here's how blending works on both sides if you want to create something like this. You can also use blending to create a mist appearance. Okay, the appearance of mistiness over here is from blending. See. And over here, the clouds have been blended. These are some examples. And okay, there are two more things we have to talk about: paper and some odds and ends. It's very important to pick the right paper for drawing. Okay, so paper roughness. Okay, like this over here, you see this is kind of rough over here, and over here you see it's more smoother paper. For drawing, typically you want slightly smoother paper because over here the lines will become rather apparent and staccato, so to speak. So there are different grades of paper in this way, and you have to pick the right. If you pick the wrong paper for drawing, it's a big mess actually. So this is a rough paper, and this is not so rough paper. So you can check out some different types of paper, and depending on what you want in your drawing, you pick the paper. Usually for drawing purposes, you want a smoother paper, kind of like this or like that. Okay, so it's very important to understand paper and paper weights. So here's an example of two papers. Okay, this is a smooth paper, and you draw like that, you get like this. But if the paper texture is coarse, you get something like this, uneven distribution of them. And here are different examples of paper. See, you get very different appearances from what kind of paper you use. So you want, for drawing purposes, you want smooth paper, and you don't want it to be too smooth, like like waxy paper. That doesn't work, because waxy type, very smooth paper, the lead doesn't bleed. It just kind of is very hard. So fine grain, there's smooth papers, fine grain papers, medium grain papers, coarse papers, etc. So you usually want a smooth paper like this for drawing. And this is the last slide. Odds and ends. Rulers are very helpful, because if you're drawing, you don't want your river to go like this and the mountains to be. So you have to have some straight lines, so to speak, reasonably, so the landscape doesn't look funny. So rulers are helpful in that way. They suggested a ruler that has a cork board on the back like this, because these are more stable for drawing. And lastly, this is a fixative. This is very useful, because once you're done with the drawing, you apply this. It's like a spray. It's a fixative spray. So after you apply this, you can't erase it. It's like permanent, and it won't smudge, and it will protect it against weathering, etc. You have to buy the right spray, though, the right fixative. This is called a fixative for different things, and you have to make sure you get the one that's for pencils. Okay. So this is a fixative, very useful. After you're done with the drawing, you spray it on it. You don't like wash your drawing with it. You just gently spray on it, and then it protects it from smearing. But after you have sprayed it, you cannot erase anything from it. If you want to correct mistakes or whatever, it's done. It's permanent. So it's a very useful tool. I think that's it. So until next time, then, assalamu alaikum. Enjoy. So now.